We never go out at night.
Horror fans, and welcome to another episode of Horror Q&A here on Silver Screams. I'm Megan Salinas, and asking the questions today,
I'm Katie Cullen. Hi, all my buddies.
And today Katie will be asking me about the movie It Comes at Night.
About which I know very little. As usual, the popcorn and whiskey rule is in effect.
Yo, yo!
When one of these runs out, the interview is over.
So, questions.
Usually I start with questions about plot and character and whatnot, but I follow the 1-star Amazon reviews Twitter.
Oh gosh!
Which makes me laugh really hard. And today they posted one for It Comes at Night, and the review was 1 star and consisted of the words, "Nothing comes at night." So, did anything come at night?
No.
Okay.
Spoiler alert, no!
Nothing came at night. I wanted to start with that because I thought that was hilarious.
Technically, yes, because at the start of the movie, one of the characters is trying to break into the house of the other characters. So technically, he did try to do that at night. But what really comes at night is the sense of paranoia and fear. And actually, that is incorrect. I actually know the answer to this question. Yes, something does come at night, and that something is a dream. Dreams come at night, which makes sense because about 90% of this movie is dream fake-out jump scares.
No shit, really?
Yep.
Does it go into full-on it was all a dream?
No, not quite.
Okay, it was only partially a dream.
What happens is that there's a character in the film who, I guess he's supposed to be our protagonist. It's kind of hard to tell. But he lives in a, as far as we can tell, post-apocalyptic world. We're not sure what kind of apocalypse, but we know an illness happens to play into it. And after the death of his grandfather at the very beginning of the movie, he starts having reoccurring nightmares.
And we're sure that the world is post-apocalyptic and it's not him being...
Yeah, no, there's definitely a disease that has ravaged the world. We don't know the actual state of the world at the moment. We just know that this family, in their wonderful house out in the woods, that happened to be away from the cities when it happened, and they have been surviving by processing their own water and growing their own food, etc., etc.
Being self-sufficient.
And they haven't really had a ton of contact with the outside world, and you get the impression that any contact that they have had has been mostly violent-based, because they're very big on carrying guns. But anyway, so after the death of his grandfather at the very beginning of the movie, this teenage kid named Travis, I believe, starts having these reoccurring nightmares. And normally I wouldn't say that that's a problem, that, you know, that's pretty standard horror movie stuff for building dread in
nightmares.
People getting sick, his grandpa getting sick.
Okay.
And then, yeah, usually a pretty lazy jump scare by the end of it. The problem is that
like Five Nights at Freddy's.
This movie does the dream fake out jump scare so many times that by the time when something terrible actually does start happening, I don't care anymore. I have spent all of my cares by the time shit actually starts going down, because I'm like, you already exhausted me by faking me out about 5 different times, to the point where I'm like, oh, who fucking cares? This will probably turn out to be a dream. And if it doesn't turn out to be a dream, also who cares? Because I don't care about any of these people.
So it's partially too many jump scares and partially how do I know this isn't a dream and why would I get invested if it's a dream?
If most of what's been shown to me is just a dream fake out.
So what's the percentage of dreaming to things that actually happen? Like 70-30?
that's actually a hard ratio to figure out. It's not all a dream movie. I'm just saying that, like, again, stuff will happen in the movie, nothing will happen, everyone will turn in for the night, and then boom, dream, nightmare, jump scare.
So usually you can get away with a single recurring nightmare, I want to say 2, maybe 3 times in a film if it's short, just to establish that it's a recurring nightmare. Or you can get away with a very involved dream sequence once. Because if you do more, one dream sequence is usually like, oh, that's lazy writing, you couldn't think of another way to express things. More than one dream sequence is like, so what did we have here?
I think it was trying to go for like rules of 3, but I really don't know.
So were all the nightmares very involved?
I mean, they were all about him. They were all about the kid named Travis, and his current situation. That's about it, yeah.
So how is this movie even set up?
The movie starts off with the grandfather character being sick, everybody having to wear gas masks, saying their goodbyes to him, and then he gets taken out into the woods, shot, his body's lit on fire, and then they bury him.
Shit.
Yeah. I think what's implied is that this disease turns you into some sort of zombie, but it doesn't actually show any zombies. And I'm a little torn on that.
Because otherwise, shooting someone is kind of horrifying.
Yeah. It's the very, like, Walking Dead mentality of, like, put them out of their own misery before they turn into a zombie, that sort of thing.
But if it's not a zombie virus, then that's just fucked up.
And apparently it only takes 24 hours after you contract the disease before you actually start to display symptoms. And then it's a very, very quick downhill from there sort of scenario. And you also get told that, like, it gets spread through physical contact. So if, if you have it, you go like, hey, Katie, how you doing? I'd now be infected. Yeah, it's pretty gross. No! Now I'm infected! No! Now I've got Katie cooties. No!
I feel like that's someone playing... Did you ever play Pandemic?
Yes. Well, no, you told me about it, though.
I feel like that's someone playing Pandemic, like the computer flash game, not the board game. And somehow finding the magical combination that will just let it go. Like, it's very, very, very difficult to win Pandemic because fucking Madagascar closes its single port and then that's it. But... yeah, I feel like the premise of this sounds like someone was playing Pandemic, managed to stealth the disease long enough for a lot of people to get it, and then spent all their points on the horrifying death-causing symptoms, and by that time it was too late. Like, that's what this sounds like to me. And that instead of doing a really big movie about this situation, we did a very small encapsulated movie about a few people in this situation.
The problem with this movie is that it's one of those things where it's not actually a horror movie, it's actually a family drama. But the thing is that
in a horror movie scenario,
that's the excuse that is being used to justify negative reviews, is that it's not actually a horror movie, it's a family drama. Or I've even seen some reviewers going like, guys, it's just too deep for you to get. It's a post-modern horror movie. It's a post-horror movie. And that's also just a pretentious way of saying it wasn't interesting or entertaining. But it actually physically hurts me to talk shit about this movie, even though I hated it.
Tell the story.
I should explain. The thing about this movie is, I watched it, I did not care for it. I thought it was boring and pointless, and that there was just not a ton to the story, that it hadn't said anything else that any given episode of The Walking Dead hadn't already said a million times better, and a million times more interesting with better practical effects.
And fewer dream sequences.
I have mixed feelings on the scope of the movie, because on the one hand, I actually think that you can make a great horror movie without ever actually showing the monsters. And two, I also do care for post-apocalyptic stories that focus more on personal, intimate stories than the larger world. And there are lots of clues about what is happening at the world at large. If you sit down and like go through this movie with a fine-tooth comb, there are a lot of hidden details in there. And it's a very well-crafted movie. The acting's amazing. The cinematography is gorgeous. But
Where's the but?
this story is awful. The characters are not interesting, and you don't care about them. And there's, for all of the wonderful lighting and beautiful camera movements and editing transitions and acting choices, there's no sense of tension, which is the central point of this. And my biggest problem is, again, the story. The story doesn't do anything new. The tension that's set up is predictable, and again, not anything we haven't seen before. But I feel terrible saying that, because the director of this film, and let me pull up his name,
The guy who did the thing.
Trey Edward Schultz, or Schultz? I think that's Schultz.
Schultz.
Okay, Trey Edward Schultz. He wrote the screenplay for this in a span of 3 days after his father, who prior to that was estranged, but his estranged father passed away. He was with him basically on his deathbed and pumped out this screenplay in 3 days as a big emotional catharsis, as a way to deal with that. And I totally get it. Like, writing is a wonderful way to express yourself in times of trauma and grief like that. But, and I've heard this before in other scripts that I kind of say, very similar situation where I know the emotion going into it, but the finished product isn't something that I personally care for. Your emotional catharsis doesn't necessarily make for a good story. And as much as it pains me to say that, because I know this guy's heart and soul went into the script, and I know that everybody who was involved with this project worked super hard on it, at the end of the day, it's just not a good movie.
Well, and the thing is,
Oh, I'm a bad person.
No, you're not. Because we're going to wander into English major territory a little bit here. Because I did my lit theory class, and I have my degree in writing, and I, here's my piece of paper saying I did the thing for 4 years. There's this wonderful little thing called death of the author. And I know that that's not a great, it's not a good name given what we just discussed. But the point of it is that regardless of what the author thought of it, regardless of what their intent was in releasing it in the world, regardless of any of the behind the scenes stuff, once you put it out into the wild, it is out there, and people will make of it what they will. And if they choose to look at the interviews, and if they choose to look at behind the scenes, and if they choose to do their research, they can. But not everyone is going to be like, well, what was the author thinking? Well, what was this about? Well, what are his opinions on whatever? They're just going to watch the movie and then be like, okay, it's this. Here's my opinions of it. It didn't have a very good story. I didn't care about the characters, but damn, was it well shot. And having that, knowing that the author went through all of this, you can still have that opinion, because that is how the work stands on its own. And you can't always sit here and be like, well, here's what the author really thought. There's an interview for it, because that stifles a lot of interpretations, and sometimes the story does need to stand on its own. We have stories lasting decades.
Yeah.
Well over 100 years at this point.
And sometimes,
and we can't sit there and be like, what did Nathaniel Hawthorne think when he wrote this? Because unless there's a primary source somewhere, like a diary or something, we're never going to know. And so without those records, without being able to look it up, you have to divorce the author's intent from what was given to us. And so for this, it does not make you a terrible person thinking that the story was not well done, even if you know that the story was written in a moment of grief and as catharsis. And as a writer, you take the works that you wrote in a moment of turmoil, in a moment of catharsis, in a moment of whatever, and you wait until you're back on an even keel, and you step back and go, okay, I need to look at this with fresh eyes. What am I going to do with it? If you plan on releasing your catharsis-fueled art into the world, you need to be able to look at it objectively, or understand that your catharsis is really not going to ring with some people. And that you may not write at your best when you are emotionally wrung out. Mm-hmm. So, I get it. I've written stuff like that when I have just been completely fucked up.
Everybody has.
As a coping mechanism.
Yeah, for sure.
But my coping mechanisms, if I decide I want the rest of the world to see them, go to a proofreader and be like, hey, does this, do I need to tone it down a little bit? Because I was having a really bad week last week and then I wrote this, so, yeah. And if he didn't do that, or if he took it to people who knew that he had been through that emotional issue and let that color their vision of the script, then that, that's what happens.
Well,
and not jiving with the finished product doesn't make you a bad person, regardless of
I've also been guilty of that too, of like, I've definitely talked to somebody about their work before I had a chance to see it, like, expressed my excitement over it, got to see it, realized it really wasn't well constructed, and then had to go and talk to the person afterwards, and they were like, what'd you think? And I was like, it was great, because I didn't have the heart to say no, and that's how I feel about this film.
And that is why proofreaders are so goddamn important, because the really good ones can sit there and be like, here's the good stuff, and here's the stuff that you really need to work on.
Yeah, and like I said, very well constructed film. All of the actors give their A game, especially some of the younger actors too. Like the main character is a 17-year-old black kid. Again, the character's name is Travis, and I thought like the film choosing to make him the focal point was a good choice. Joel Edgerton also did a great job, playing the dad, and that's kind of a cool thing too. Is that we got two families in the film, and they're both interracial families. And no one says a word about it. And that's great.
That is good.
That's great. That was a great choice. Too bad the characters themselves were not interesting.
You can cast the best people in the world, but if the script is boring, they can't do anything with it. Because they are not the writers.
Again, they're acting the hell out of it. And I'm sure, like, the director sat down and was like, this is your character and this is what they're going through. And according to the director, he knows what's going on in the great wide world, but he's not telling. Gosh, I feel so bad. But this movie's so pretentious. And this is the problem. We actually did a trailer reaction to It Comes at Night, and it never
looked pretty damn spooky.
It never actually got posted because I accidentally deleted it, I think.
Was that in the Great Purge of 4 weeks ago?
It might have been. But yeah, it never got put up. But it was a great trailer. One of these days we're gonna have to do like a top 10 list of like top 10 greatest horror movie trailers, and that
we've reacted to.
No, just period. And that will definitely
beat The Shining. Come on,
beat Alien.
You can beat Alien with The Shining.
Psycho. But like this one, definitely
was just a walk through the house.
Definitely, it was good though. But this one would definitely be on my personal top 10 list because it was a really great trailer. The red door is creepy. Wonderful sense of dread. But as we were watching it, I was like, look, I like the stuff this studio is putting out, but they're also kind of a pretentious studio. And I worry that this is the film where they, I don't think it was necessarily this film.
Where they go full pretension?
Where they go full up their own ass. And honestly, I don't think this is that film. I think Ghost Story is going to be that film. I haven't seen it yet, but based on the trailer reaction that we did, I'm like, I think A24 is up their own ass at this point.
This is the foreplay.
Yeah. Oh, no. Kind of, yes. But yeah,
We're running a little low on popcorn. Tell me about the red door. What was the deal with that?
So the most of the movie takes place at this family's house, which again is gorgeous. The red door is the door to the to like basically the entryway, which leads to outside. And
foyer.
so that door always remains closed and locked, and only Joel Edgerton's character, the dad, has the key. And so when they invite this other family to come and live with them, they basically are like, hey, these are the strict rules that we live by that have kept us alive. You're going to have to abide by those rules if you're going to live here. Well, one day, the family dog runs off to go and get, because they hear something off in the woods. And
Bye, Fido.
Travis loses his grip on it and the dog runs away. That night, or maybe a few nights later, the dog comes back, and Travis, after a nightmare, sees the other couple's kid in his grandfather's room, asleep on the floor. So he takes the kid back to the room with his parents, and then goes back down the hallway because he can't sleep at night. And he sees that the door is slightly open and that the lock is undone. And when he basically determines to shoot someone's in the house, wakes up his family, and they realize that the dog is in the entryway. It's come back and it is sick. So they kill the dog and they have a discussion where who unlocked the door? How is someone in the house? Did somebody unlock the door? Hey, Travis, did you unlock the door? Well, no. Nobody could have unlocked the door because only Joel Edgerton has the key, but he clearly didn't do it because he lives his life very by the book. No one knows. The implication,
Really? Wow.
The implication is that it's the little kid, but I don't know how he did that without the key.
So that's just a gaping plot hole.
It's a gaping plot hole. The implication is that the kid opened the door, made contact with the dog, got sick, went to the grandfather's room, and then because Travis came in physical contact with him and then took him back to his parents' bed where he made physical contact with them, they're all infected now.
Great.
And it only takes 24 hours to get in for the infection to take hold. And we already know from a previous scene that Will, the dad in the other family, isn't necessarily 100% honest with everybody. So they're all like, look, they can't be here if they're infected, but we also can't let them leave because they'll take our food, which it doesn't matter at this point. If they're infected, you're all infected. It does not matter. You should come together and or let them go. It really doesn't matter at that point because if you're all infected, you're all fucking dead.
Yeah, and if it's well, we can't let them leave, well, what are you gonna do if one of them just dies in the hallway? You can't touch the body, you can't...
Yeah. And, so Travis overhears that the other family's planning on leaving, leads to this big altercation where that family's trying to leave, they're trying to prevent them from leaving, and as a result of this scuffle, the entire other family gets shot and killed by our family. This is one of those movies where it's there are no heroes and there are no villains, just people making choices. And yeah, those are choices. It doesn't mean I have to like or appreciate it.
But if it's all hinged on a plot hole, if no one knows who opened the door, are we just supposed to believe that Tiny Child can pick locks?
Or that somebody forgot to lock it when they closed up for the night, which, again, not likely considering how structured Paul is in his regiment every single night. And then, of course, the movie ends after that whole family's dead, shot, murdered. The movie ends with Travis getting sick, of course, and his mom in the room giving him the same words of comfort that she gave her dad at the very beginning of the story. Only this time she doesn't have a gas mask on. And the movie ends with a shot of her and her husband at the table, framed exactly in the same way that the family was framed at the table at the very beginning of the movie, minus Travis this time. And the idea is that she didn't have to wear her mask because at that point they're all infected. And so it's just a matter of time before they end up dead as well. And then we cut to black and it comes at night. And I don't fucking care.
Oh, that sounds like a downer.
The female characters in this story were not written very well at all. They were boring and two-dimensional and just kind of existed to look sad and complain.
Isn't that why you have a dog?
Well, I will say that, like,
Also,
again,
you don't let the dog in if you don't know where it's been.
the most character was given to Travis because he's a teenage boy who the second a pretty lady comes into the house that's not his mom, he's like, lady, and starts having sexy dreams about her. And that is basically all she's there for.
Sexy dreams that turn into jump scares?
That turn into jump scares, yeah.
All right, well, the popcorn is almost done. So, what are your final thoughts on this movie?
I wanted to like it. I really wanted to like it. I had heard good things. It's a very pretty movie.
Would you watch it again?
Part of me feels like I should, and I feel, like I said, I feel terrible because the day after I saw it and hated it, I listened to what the director had to say and realized, oh, this came from a very emotional place, and that's where I had to sit down and really process this. I've been processing this movie for a long time, guys. I didn't just come back from seeing it like I normally do. This took a lot of thought. I listened to a lot of other people's opinions on it, and at the end of the day, I'm like, guys, I didn't fucking like it.
Well, and here's the thing. Every director is going to have an opinion on their own piece. Every director is going... not every director. Most directors are going to like their pieces and like what they put out. So listening to a director say, oh, it's this and it's this and it's this and that's the other thing, well, this is their baby that they worked super hard on, and so they're going to be biased. Regardless of whether or not it was an idea that came to them in a dream or that they got while they were stuck in traffic on the 405, or if it was emotional catharsis from the death of a family member. Like, it doesn't matter where it came from. What matters is where it goes. And if it goes off a fucking cliff, you can't sit there and be like, well, it came from a good place. Because it went off a cliff. Like, it coming from a good or emotional or whatever place doesn't change the fact that it is now at the bottom of the cliff.
I will say there is one good, genuine moment of tension. And it's the first time you realize Will is a liar, because when he's first getting questioned by the family after he breaks into their house, he says that they were staying with his brother at one point and that now he's dead and they're off in a different place. And then later in the movie, as he's shooting the shit with Paul, he lets it slip that he was an only child. And Paul has to sit there and go, didn't you say you were staying with your brother? It's like, oh, my brother-in-law. And it's like, you can tell he's lying. And I will say this as a plus to the movie, you can't tell, you're not supposed to know when a character is lying, and you are straight up certain that not everyone is telling the truth 100% of the time. And in that moment, I was like, ooh, this is a good moment of tension. We know he's a liar. And then the scene just ends. The scene just ends. It doesn't go anywhere. And that was my problem. I was like, ooh, now we're getting somewhere. And then no, we're not. We weren't. So the one genuinely good moment of tension, out the window. Out the window.
Well,
out of popcorn?
Out of popcorn.
Do you have any final questions?
That was my final question. For your final thoughts. Anything else?
Yeah.
All that's left is salt. I feel like that's a good place to end it, don't you?
Yeah. Like I said, the only other thing I want to say is that I've never hated such a well-constructed film. But I do. Sorry, guys.
That's life.
Anyway.
That is life. If the story went off a cliff, oh well.
Anyway, I want to know, what are your guys' thoughts about It Comes at Night? What were your questions leaving the theater? Because clearly we had lots of questions. I still have so many questions. Like, how much whiskey do we have left?
About half a bottle. What is the best constructed movie that you have still really super disliked, and why?
Yeah, that's a good
Avatar, because
question. Can I confess to something else?
you're allowed to like it.
I'm not a fan of Godfather 2 because I didn't see the first Godfather when I watched it, and I also started watching it at 10:30.
Can we tell the story?
Sure.
Can we tell the
Go
story?
ahead.
So it's mostly your
I might
story.
cut
Was
this
not in the
because
room.
then my credibility as a film critic will go right out the door.
So it's college, watching it for a project. I think I was there for part of it, and then I wandered off back into our room. And at about midnight, because it's a DVD set, and at about midnight I'm sitting in our room, and indignant and furious from the living room I hear, "Insert disc 2!" 2-disc movie. 2 DVD movie.
I didn't know.
Wow, guys.
I didn't know.
That must have been
And
a
I
very
started
old.
it at
That must have been
10:30.
an old DVD set because damn. But that I love it. I do.
I'm sorry.
Don't apologize. You're allowed to have opinions. Not every classic is good. Most classics are determined by old white men.
That's also true.
Doesn't make them good.
But yeah, I think I'm gonna sit down and like watch a horror comedy next, because like maybe not next, but tonight, or tomorrow, sometime this weekend.
In the
Because
future.
because there's just something really great about horror, and this It Comes at Night did not embrace that. And I love the movies that fully embrace what horror is and what it can do.
In its myriad forms.
Whether they go the comedic route, the campy route, or the full-on, like, straight up, we're gonna just tell a really passionate drama, and horror just happens to be the genre that we're telling it in. Whatever way, like, the films that really embrace horror are the ones that I think excel the best. And this one, I don't think it knew what it wanted to be. Either because of the marketing, or because of the nature of how it was written, or because of, like, I don't know, maybe just a mixture of ideas that just didn't fully come together. But whatever the case, it did not embrace the fact that it was a horror movie even after it came out.
Oh.
Just embrace it. Just be what you are and you will do great.
And if you're not a horror movie, don't act like it. Then again, the marketing bug screwed up Crimson Peak as well.
Yeah.
Because people don't understand Gothic romance. But whole other topic,
story.
whole other everything.
We'll have a talk about that one day.
Yes.
Anyway, Katie, where can people go if they want to find you?
You can follow me all over the social medias and on YouTube at Kiaxet. That is Kiaxet. If you want to see us react to things that are not horror themed, they live on that channel.
And I'm Megan. You guys can follow me on Twitter and Instagram at Menguin. That's TheMenguin. Be sure to follow Silver Screams at Silver_Screams. Like us on Facebook. All that jazz.
Come on, babe, why don't we paint the town?
And all that jazz. But anyway, thank you guys so much for watching. Go tell your stories, because the world needs to hear them.
Make sure you get them proofread first by someone who's not emotionally attached to it.
That too. Anyway, thank you guys so much for watching. We'll see you all next time. When the movie started and I saw that the kid had a dog, I was like, that's Chekhov's dog. Because a dog, when presented at the beginning of a horror movie, will certainly be dead by the time it ends.
Not always. Just mostly.
I was right, though.